Have you ever thought about how we perceive time in history? We often imagine ancient civilizations as belonging to a distant past of almost mythical past, while institutions we see today feel much more modern. But what if I told you that one of the world's most famous universities is actually older than one of the most iconic empires of the Americas? It sounds unbelievable, but it's true. Let's unravel this incredible historical timeline together. Most of us have heard of Oxford University. We picture its beautiful spires, ancient libraries, and students in black robes. It's a symbol of tradition and academic excellence. But how old is it really? Well, historical records show that teaching at Oxford started in some form as early as 1096. To put that into perspective, this was during the High Middle Ages in Europe. William the Conqueror's son was on the throne of England. The First Crusade was just beginning, and the world was a vastly different place. Oxford wasn't a grand university with colleges right away. Of course, it began as a small gathering of masters and students, likely organized by the church. But the seeds were planted. The institution grew rapidly, especially after King Henry II banned English students from attending the University of Paris in 1167. This royal decree essentially forced scholars to find a new home for learning within England, and Oxford became the natural choice. By the 13th century, colleges started to be established, forming the structure we recognize today. It was a beacon of knowledge in a world that was slowly emerging from the Dark Ages. Now, let's journey across the Atlantic Ocean to ancient Mesoamerica. When we think of the Aztecs, we picture the magnificent city of Tenochtitlan, with its towering pyramids and bustling causeways. Built on an island in the middle of a lake, we think of a powerful, sophisticated civilization known for its art, astronomy, and fierce warriors. But when did this incredible society actually begin? The story of the Aztec people, or the Mexica as they called themselves, starts with a long migration from their ancestral homeland. Aztlan, according to their own legends, they wandered for generations, guided by their patron god, Huitzilopochtli. He promised them a Sanan eagle perched on a cactus. Devouring a snake witch would mark the spot where they should build their new home. Around the year 1325, they finally saw this exact sign on a small, marshy island in Lake Texcoco. This is the year historians mark as the founding of their great capital city, Tenochtitlan, which would eventually become the center of the mighty Aztec Empire. Notice that date, 1325. So, let's put these two timelines side by side. Teaching at Oxford began around 1096. The city of Tenochtitlan was founded in 1325. This means that Oxford University was already well over 200 years old before the Aztec civilization even began to build its capital city. By the time the Aztecs were laying the first stones of Tenochtitlan, Oxford had already produced famous scholars like Roger Bacon, who was a pioneer of the scientific method. It had survived riots between students and townspeople, established its first colleges, and was a recognized center of learning throughout Europe. It's a staggering thought. A university that we can visit today was thriving centuries before the rise of an empire that we now study as ancient history. Let's explore this further. The Aztec Empire itself didn't become a dominant force overnight. After founding Tenochtitlan in 1325, it took another century for them to form the Triple Alliance with the neighboring city-states of Texcoco and Tecpan. This alliance, formed around 1428, marked the true beginning of the Aztec Empire's expansion. From that point, they grew rapidly, conquering surrounding territories and demanding tribute. For just under 100 years, their empire flourished. They developed a complex social structure, a sophisticated calendar, and an agricultural system that fed a massive population. Their art and architecture were breathtaking. Yet, this golden age was remarkably brief. In 1519, the Spanish conquistadors, led by Hernan Cortes, arrived on the coast of Mexico. Just 2 years later, In 1521, Tenochtitlan fell. The entire Aztec Empire, which had existed for less than 2 centuries since its founding and less than 1 century as a major imperial power, was brought to an end. It's a dramatic and tragic story of a civilization's rapid rise and even more rapid fall. Now, let's look back at Oxford during that same period. When Courts was marching on Tenochtitlan in the early 1500s, Oxford was in the middle of the Renaissance. It was a hub for the new wave of humanist thought. Scholars were rediscovering classical Greek and Roman texts. The printing press had arrived, revolutionizing the spread of knowledge. Erasmus, one of the greatest scholars of the Northern Renaissance, had visited and taught there. While one world was ending in Mesoamerica, another was being reborn in Europe, and Oxford University was right at the heart of it. It continued to grow, to teach, and to evolve, surviving the English Reformation, the Civil War, the Enlightenment, and the Industrial Revolution. It has been in continuous operation for over 900 years, witnessing nearly a millennium of human history unfold. This comparison isn't meant to diminish the achievements of the Aztecs. Their civilization was brilliant and complex, and its legacy is still felt today in Mexico. What it does, however, is challenge our perception of time. We tend to place ancient civilizations like the Aztecs, Incas, or Mayans into one mental box, and historical institutions like European universities into another. We see one as gone and the other as present. But history is not so neat. The timeline shows us that they were, for a time, contemporaries. While scholars were debating theology in Oxford's stone halls, Aztec priests were conducting ceremonies atop their pyramids. While English students were learning Latin and Greek, Aztec merchants were trading goods in the vast market of Tlatelolco. This juxtaposition highlights the different trajectories of civilizations. The longevity of an institution like Oxford speaks to its ability to adapt and integrate into a continuously evolving political and social landscape. It was protected by its role in the church, and later, by the state. It became part of the very fabric of the nation. The Aztec Empire, for all its power, was more fragile. It was a relatively young empire, built on conquest, which created internal resentments that the Spanish were able to exploit. Its sudden and violent end meant that its institutions didn't have the chance to evolve over centuries. So the next time you see a picture of Oxford's ancient walls, remember that they are not just old by European standards. They are older than the entire Aztec Empire. They stood while Tenochtitlan was being built, while it flourished, and after it fell. This simple fact does something amazing. It collapses the distance between the past and the present. It makes history feel less like a series of disconnected stories and more like a single, vast, and interconnected tapestry. It reminds us that the world has always been a place of overlapping timelines, where different cultures rise and fall, often in ways that defy our expectations. History isn't just a collection of dates. It's a tool that allows us to shift our perspective and see the world in a completely new light. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through time. If you found this as fascinating as I do, please consider liking the video and subscribing for more historical deep dives. See you next time.